Hi guys, big respect. This is me, Apache Indian, live and direct on the big Brit Asia, alongside Dr. Jack himself. How are we doing, sir?
Very well, sir. What about yourself?
Beautiful. Yes, very good. Very excited about the show today. Brand new series we're going to bring you over the weeks, just about health. We say just about health, but the most important thing, especially right now. And today we're going to be talking about the obvious vaccines. We have two very, very special guests joining us on Zoom, Dr. Bazana and Dr. Carter. So do we like to introduce them, say something about them? Do we know more? You guys can introduce yourselves. So how are we doing, first of all?
Good, thank you.
Dr. Carter, you good? Where are you joining us from?
So I'm joining you from sunny Nottinghamshire today.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Bazana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be on with Apache India. I'm from Stratford in East London. That's where I'm here today.
Thank you guys for joining us today. And you know what? We are going to be doing the boom shakalak moves later because Dr. Carter's already showing me some of his moves. But to go straight in there, we have some questions for you about the vaccine. So I hope you don't mind. We're going to go straight there. So do we have the first question for them? Jack? I can't see all the way from here, you know, the eyes ain't so good.
I'll read them all out.
Go there.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit more about the COVID-19 vaccine and what it's made of?
Yeah, of course. Now, 3 main vaccines have been approved by the MHRA for use in the UK. So they're the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine, and the Moderna vaccine. Both the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines are called mRNA vaccines, and these work by injecting a part of the virus's genetic code into your body so that your immune system recognizes the vaccine in the future, and it produces T cells and antibodies to fight the virus. Now, the vaccines don't contain the live virus, which means that they can't give you or anyone around you COVID-19. The AstraZeneca Oxford jab is what we call an adenovirus vector vaccine. So to debunk some of that jargon, what that means is it uses some harmless version of a common virus like a common cold virus, and it stimulates the production of what we call a spike protein, which is the outer coat of the coronavirus. And that causes your body to produce antibodies to fight the COVID-19 virus. But the main thing that we need to take away from all of this is that none of the vaccines contain any animal products. And if you want to see the components and ingredients of the vaccines, you can view these on the gov.uk website.
Okay, so just as straight away, I tell you, I have my vaccine later on today, and I'm confused already. Why is there different vaccines? Should I be going to ask for a certain one?
So this is not a time to window shop for vaccines. This is not about playing vaccine top trumps. This is all about having the vaccine, whichever one that you're offered when invited to do so, because ultimately they've all been through very stringent checks and balances by the MHRA and approved for use in the UK, which means they're all really effective and really safe.
I spoke to somebody, a contact of mine, who actually works in the NHS, telling them that I have my vaccine on the Friday, and they told me to go for one instead of the other. Why is that? I mean, this is what I'm trying to say, that people are getting confused out there, they're getting different messages out there, and there's a lot of controversy. So, I mean, even myself, as I said, that was one conversation. I'll tell you about more conversations I've had because I've got my vaccine tonight. But just by somebody's telling me that they work in the NHS and they've been told, don't have that one and you must go for that one. So this is the messages that people are getting. How can we clarify this?
So I think there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of myths on the internet, on social media. And obviously I can't comment on the particular individual that you mentioned who works for the NHS. But what I would say is that we need to ensure that people's health beliefs, their previous experiences, their own beliefs about the vaccine are based on facts and based on evidence and government guidance, because ultimately there is no difference between the vaccines in terms of efficacy and safety. They've got slight differences in terms of percentages, fractions of a percentage this way or that way, but ultimately they're all very safe and effective. Now, there's many factors and reasons why people have their misgivings about the vaccine, and these may range from previous experiences with their own healthcare settings, and healthcare providers may be in their country of origin. They may have a deep mistrust for healthcare providers and the governments where maybe they originate from, or maybe they've had negative experiences in this country with healthcare providers, which has maybe tainted their view or maybe deepened this divide and mistrust between themselves and the healthcare profession. But I can reassure you, I've had both of my jabs of the vaccine. My parents, who are in their mid-80s, have had both of their jabs, and all of my friends and family have had it to keep themselves safe, their family safe, and also the NHS safe.
Wow.
That's really good to know, and really well put.
Yeah.
Well, I think so many of us, we've lost so much, haven't we? People have lost loved ones, they've lost jobs, they've lost livelihoods, and this is our only viable way out of this, isn't it? There aren't really any good adjuncts that can stop it on its own. There are some good ones around, steroids, prednisolone, and some other adjuncts, but it's our only real path, isn't it? And exactly. It's brought with it a lot of mental health problems, which bring chronic diseases as well because of the habits you pick up. So there's a long-term legacy. So I think we all need to do our bit to push towards the winning line now, because we've got freedom in our nostrils, we can smell it, but it's not quite there. We just need to keep that determination up, because ultimately, yes, it is about us, but it's about our loved ones, isn't it? It's about your auntie, it's about your mother, it's about your grandma. So it's trying to see it as, it's our joint responsibility to bring about a solution and to try and step outside of our own beliefs a bit and just think about the herd.
It is. It's taking that. Yeah, exactly. You say it spot on. It's about taking that personal ownership and responsibility, and not only protecting yourselves, but those around you, your loved ones, and your own community as well. And ultimately, we're only going to get that when we get a minimum herd immunity, as you mentioned, for the background population. And in order to do that, we all need to have the vaccine when invited to do so. But we've come so far, and the sun is starting to shine. The times are going to go forward soon, and let's not be lulled into a false sense of security either. You've had the vaccine, that's great, but also ensure that you continue to adhere to, hand washing,
Absolutely.
face masks, and social distancing.
Well, it's like Jonathan Van Tam so eloquently put, as he often does, it's like being up 3-0, but how often do we see people lose 4-3? That's where we are. It's just that little bit more discipline, isn't it? And then happier times are ahead. So, how were the vaccines developed so quickly then? Because it normally lasts, a good year and a half, 2 years, even longer to go through everything, doesn't it? So that's another thing that we get asked quite a lot. How did it happen so quickly? Why?
Should we ask Dr. Fasana?
Yeah, so that's a really important common question. And of course, we know that we haven't in our lifetime seen a pandemic. This is a virus that is not like the flu virus. It is a virus that kills people. I work in Newham in the East End of London, and we had the highest COVID death rates in the whole country. So I know what it's like, and my community where I live in Newham know what it's like to live and die with COVID. And as you say, Jack, this is the only thing we have to stop us getting or giving us a less of a chance, less of a chance of getting COVID. No vaccine is 100%. So because it affected everybody worldwide, understandably, a lot of money went into this and a lot of time went into this. So normally when vaccines are produced, there'll be a set of volunteers who come forward and say, no, I'm happy to try. And then they'll have more volunteers the following year and maybe more the following year. What happened in this trial, because it is so important and it's affected everybody worldwide, they've just done that together. So they've had the same number. There's still been hundreds and thousands of volunteers who've taken part in the trials, the same number. But instead of doing it year after year, they've done it together in parallel. And of course, now we know in Britain that even if we weren't too convinced by the trials, 22 million people, 1 in 3 adults, have had their vaccine with no deaths, nothing but a lot of protection. But it's because people have there's been a lot of money put into it, understandably, and the same number of trial participants were in it. So I think that's really important for people to know that it's just as safe just because it was rolled out quickly, they haven't at all, the MRHA that Carter talks about, there are regulatory bodies, they would not license something that had even a little bit, an iota of
Absolutely,
something.
absolutely. I mean, it's a phenomenal achievement, and it brings me joy knowing that, you know, when our shared focus is on an outcome, look at what amazing things we can produce.
It's amazing, and I have to say, I mean, I'm a British Bangladeshi. I was born in Britain. I don't think I've ever been more proud to live in Britain. My father grew up in Bangladesh, and he's still alive. He lives up in Lancashire, and he's 78. And he said, "You do know, Fazana, that he's had his vaccine. I've had my vaccine. If we were in Bangladesh, we'd be paying for this vaccine. You know, not everybody would be able to afford it. So I think it's such a gift that we have this free, but fully understandable that people have their worries, and, you know, and interesting that, you know, Apache's mentioned people have been saying to him, you know, are you sure you want to go for it? Because people do have fears. It is a fearful time. Lockdown's fearful. It's a very strange time. And I think people should come forward, come and speak to your GP practices, your community pharmacists, but don't be afraid to ask those questions. Rather, we have those conversations, and then you can make an informed decision, because there is, as Carter says, a lot of misinformation going around, and who do you believe? You know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely, very well put.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're gonna. I mean, still, as I move around the communities, I see more divide. I see more people like 50-50 now. I mean, it's going the wrong way, if you like. But we're going to discuss that right after the break. Yeah. Thank you guys very, very much. A great start, but listen, you got to come back to watch this. Thank you very much. See you on the other side. Welcome back, guys. It's me, Apache, and alongside Dr. Jack. And two more doctors right there, Dr. Fasan and Dr. Carter joining us. And I'm just a layman view here, but, you know, I'm very, very serious, just like you guys, asking questions about the vaccine. So welcome back to the show about health. Remember, health is wealth. So we're talking about why people are now kind of asking all these questions. Do you face that as well? Do people just come for the vaccination, or are you doing a lot of education and telling people that it's good and it does work? Or are you still getting a lot of questions yourselves as doctors?
I'm getting a lot. In fact, I chose to do a piece of work ringing my patients who are over 65. I couldn't do it with the under 65s. When my reception team were ringing them, inviting them to have the vaccine. And one of the things I noticed is that only half my patients from my practice were going, only 50%. And as we were talking earlier, 50% is not going to be enough to protect us as a society. And it was really interesting that the 50% who were not going, all but one of them were from various BAME communities, many South Asians, many Eastern Europeans. So I thought, Black Africans, I thought I would call them myself to see if they had any questions. And they did, but most of it was fear about the long-term side effects. And since I've done that call, and since more people across the country have been vaccinated, now actually 8 out of 10 of my over 65s have been, which is great. Still not quite 9 out of 10, but 8 out of 10. So it's definitely improved. And I really found there's one message I want to get across. It's that please do ask the questions and know your facts from your fiction.
Absolutely. I think to become an expert in anything, it takes at least 10,000 hours of hard work, doesn't it, to develop that level of mastery. But unfortunately now with social media, that's flipped, isn't it? And the people seen as authoritative don't really have the background and the credibility to say things about these kind of matters. So it's great there's trusted voices like yourselves out there, and that's who people should go to, rather than Jeff on Facebook.
I mean, I have to say that just as, you know, just watching the media and watching what's going around the world, it has been really confusing, some of the messages, especially from different countries. I spent a lot of time in different countries. I was in Spain throughout the summer, and you walk outside, you're getting fined if you don't have a mask on. In this country, they haven't implemented that law. In America, they're laughing at us, you know, the UK. And so it hasn't been, it's been something that's affected the world, but we haven't been shown unity around the world, so that's confusing. For the people watching that, different laws, different countries, different people. And then, you know, people, you know, they've got cultural reasons, religious reasons. Some of the things that you've said to your patients, can we clarify some of those for our viewers? I mean, where
Yeah. So I've had a lot of patients, not only in my practice, but also which have come by social media and other platforms and other routes. And the main questions about the vaccine from ethnic minority individuals were things like, is there alcohol in the vaccine? Are there meat products in the vaccine? Are there microchips to track your location to do with the 5G
will it break my
network?
fast even? Yeah. Will it break my fast during Eid or
Will it break
Ramadan?
my
Yeah.
fast? And will it affect my fertility? And a lot of myths, which there's no evidence behind at all. And I've been working really hard on social media and also on the TV and the radio to try and debunk these myths and provide some factual information. But also, information's all good. However, the information has to seep in and sink in, and that can only happen when the information is given to you by someone that looks like you, sounds like you, dresses like you, acts like you. It's that establishment of rapport, it's that trust. And that's why we've been encouraging faith leaders, celebrities, community champions to try and work alongside the medical profession to try and build or rebuild some bridges between communities and the healthcare profession.
Wow.
No, it's great. So let's just go a bit more into, you know, why the COVID-19 vaccine is so important.
Well, in the UK, 3 vaccines have been approved for use so far. These are the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, the Pfizer-BioNTech, and the Moderna vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccines offer the best protection against catching the virus and experiencing the most severe symptoms. Now, research shows that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is 82.4% effective after 2 doses. Early data shows that it might also substantially reduce transmission. And data from 7 days after the second dose, the efficacy of the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine was 95%. And finally, data from the Moderna vaccine shows that it's got an efficacy of around 94%. Now, I don't want to get too bogged down with the numbers, but from these numbers in the 80s and 90s, you can get a feel that these vaccines are extremely safe and extremely efficacious or effective. And it's like I said earlier, it's not a time to get bogged down with window shopping for vaccines. When you're offered this vaccine and invited, please go down and have whichever one that you're offered. It will provide you and your family with a lot of protection.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, what's good now is we are getting some good data about how much it's reduced transmissibility. You know, round about 2/3 depending on the study you read, and hospitalisation is down by around 90% depending on the study you read. It's really compelling stats, isn't it? And it shows actually the proof's in the pudding, guys. You know, the vaccination program is to blame for the right reasons for this, and that's why we're seeing such a great drop in the rates. We've got rates now we haven't seen since September, the middle of September. You know. So
and
phenomenal.
you hit the nail on the head there, Jack, because ultimately you need not only trial data. So, for example, the first vaccine, there's 40,000 participants in that, and it's all great to say, look, no one was hospitalized, and that was the case in those 40,000 people. But now we're getting real world data. So data from people who are having the vaccine in real life rather than a trial setting. And that vaccine data is like gold dust because we've vaccinated over 20 million people. And so the data from that is very powerful indeed.
And what I also think is, you know, certainly the media, they know that you don't sell stories, you sell emotions. And they know that you sell negative ones better than positive ones. So they're always going to highlight the negative stories because it sells more newspaper column inches, right?
Exactly.
So there's that as well.
Can we bring Fasana back in?
Yeah, I was going to say I guess there's nothing more negative, just remembering the risk of COVID, the disease. Bangladeshis are 5 times more likely to die. Black Africans are 5 times more likely to die of COVID. Pakistanis are 2 times more likely to die. So this is real. And, you know, younger people are still affected by COVID, even if, thank God, we're not dying, and many have. In the East End of London, many young people sadly have, but there is this condition called long COVID. It's a new disease that we as doctors, I'm sure you'll know, Jack, and Carter, we're just discovering ourselves. We don't know much about it, but it does seem to affect lots of different parts of the body, and it's causing quite a lot of distress. People who've had to leave, young people had to leave jobs. It's a long-term condition. So this vaccine is the only thing we have to protect ourselves from that.
But there's this belief of, oh, it's just like a mild flu. And for many people, perhaps it is, but what about the long term? We're finding that you're quite right. It's seen as now multi-systemic, isn't it? It's leading to more propensity for blood clots and many other things. We're not going to see the full legacy of for a number of years, I don't suppose, until the data properly comes out. So it's not something you should just bat off. So obviously the vaccine rollout has been split into cohorts, hasn't it, based off of age and demographic and risk factors, etc., etc. Can you just give a bit more info on how that was decided and where we're at now with it?
Yeah. Okay. So the JCVI are the body who decide how to roll out the vaccine to 65 million people in this country. Now, that is not a gig that I envy. That is a lot of responsibility, and it is a very challenging and difficult job. But the main risk factor, as you mentioned, Jack, is age. Age is by far the biggest risk factor, which determines whether you contract the virus and or develop the complications. Now, you mentioned there are some other clinical indices or clinical factors which feed into the rollout, but ultimately age is the main one. So it's been stratified or divided into age groups, and that rollout is very successful at the moment and is coordinated between local community hubs, the hospitals, and general practice has underpinned the rollout of this vaccine very successfully, because ultimately that's what we do as GPs. We are the most experienced in rolling out immunizations and vaccinations. We roll out the flu vaccination every year. We immunize all newborn babies. So there is no one better than GPs to deliver this to the patients that they know in the community. And it's been very effective so far. The only one thing that's limited the rollout so far, which is out of our control, is vaccine supply. But that is being ironed out as we speak, and the vaccine supply is going to increase as of next week.
Thank you so much. I'm learning so much. I hope you guys are enjoying this, because this is some serious stuff, and all the questions you guys have been asking, I hope that we're clarifying some of these points. We're gonna take another break. We have to take this all in. What you say, Doctor? Yeah, we were back again. Yeah, don't go anywhere. Join us on the other side. Respect. Welcome back, guys. Me, Apache, Indian, alongside Dr. Jack. We're talking about health, and we're talking about the vaccines with two special guests from around the country, Dr. Fazana and Dr. Carter. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all these questions. As I said, I went out in the community just yesterday around Handsworth, Asian, Black, and it was almost not even cool to say I was getting my vaccine. I was saying I get a vaccine. And I was like, it wasn't the cool thing to say anymore. And I thought, wow, I thought everyone would be kind of divided in the room, but really everyone's saying, no, it's a flu, it's this, it's that, it's going to come, it's going to... What do we do when we're left with a situation where a lot of people, or some people, don't want to have the vaccine? Where does that leave us? We can't force people to...
This is the $1 million question, isn't it? Because if we, as that corny saying goes, unless we're all protected, nobody is protected. I'm really interested in finding out why you're having the experiences that you're having. So why are people saying don't have it? Is it because of some of the issues that Carter's already talked about? There are, and these are complete myths about fertility. I've had women say to me, you will understand this, Dr. Hussain, as an Asian woman, even if there's a 1% chance that I can't have a child, I am not going to take that vaccine. You understand the shame that will bring to my family, to my in-laws, to myself. So it's really important for people, not only like me, but people that we trust. We trust our family members, we trust our friends, to say that I don't know where this lie is coming from, because it is a lie. Vaccines don't work like that. There's no vaccine that causes infertility. Then there's the one that you mentioned, in fact, Apache, earlier. There's been a lot of confusion, hasn't there, worldwide, different systems, even with the vaccine. Denmark's got an issue with AstraZeneca, UK hasn't. So people are getting a lot of information and thinking, well, if it's not safe in Denmark, why would it be safe in the UK? We certainly haven't got any evidence to suggest that there's any problems with safety with AstraZeneca. Now, more than 20 million people have had the vaccine. But I think my message would be to try and listen to our communities about what are their reasons for being afraid or being unsure, and help to answer those questions and bring our communities with us. This is not something you or I or Jack or Carter can do independently. This is a community problem. We can only solve it if we're helping each other as communities.
Absolutely.
I do see where it's all coming from. I mean, the confusion right from the start with the politicians and changing so it's a trust factor, isn't it? We're trusting people to give us information, and then they give you different information the following week. Or back in the day, if you make a mistake as a politician, we can lose our job. But now we're losing lives.
Yeah.
I had a lovely patient say to me, I really don't know about this vaccine. Doctor is saying one day Christmas was on, the next day Christmas got cancelled. And, that was a very good example of, the upset that people face. And all I will say is no matter what your political stance, no matter what your historical mistrust is in the government, this is a vaccine that will save your life. I would not advocate something that I wouldn't truly believe in myself. And I took the vaccine as soon as I was invited, not because I'm a doctor, but I want to be here to look after my 17 and 18-year-old kids. I wanted my dad to take it because he's 78 and I want to make sure that he's still alive next year. And I would definitely not advocate something that I wouldn't put in my own body. But if we can just think about what it is this vaccine is, and put aside for a moment that lots of things have gone wrong, lots of messaging and lots of things, I'm not a politician, but lots of things have not maybe been as smooth and consistent as we would like. But as Jack said earlier, this is the only thing we have to save our lives.
Well, I think as well, we don't want to take any bitterness we have towards the government and make it that other people suffer for maybe what they haven't got right. It's the everyday person that's going to ultimately suffer for that mistrust. And I think fear is a very big motivator for people, isn't it? It's a very, very powerful motivator. But I think an important thing is the MHRA has very, very, very stringent levels, don't they, in terms of what they let through categories. Even if you're doing a fairly small health app or something, to get accredited for that is incredibly rigorous, let alone the clinical trials involved with a vaccine. And then everyone in the medical professional has taken an oath, right? We all have a duty of care that we take very, very seriously. We're not just going to throw that under the bus to suddenly, not look out for people and out for patients, are we?
Dr. Khan?
Exactly, Jack. And as you say, the Hippocratic Oath also says do no harm. And as you mentioned, Fazana, and as you mentioned, Apache, the thing about politicians is that they sometimes play party politics with things like health, education, defence, to try and win votes and for popularism. And I've been saying since the beginning of the pandemic, my message to the politicians has been, let's not use COVID as a party political hot potato. Let's take a cross-party approach at this, because ultimately we all need to work together to try and get on top of this virus and beat the pandemic. It's not about party X or party Y or party Z. It's about working together to try and beat it collaboratively.
Absolutely, well said. I mean,
Yeah,
so let's say somebody's had COVID. Can they go and get the jab? What's the process there?
It's a very good question that I've been asked a lot. If they've had COVID, the infection, that doesn't mean that it will protect them from not getting COVID again. We don't know. So the absolute message is, yes, please do come for your vaccine. It doesn't mean that you've got protection. So if you've had COVID, the infection, that doesn't mean that you don't need the jab. You do.
And I've got a jab, as I said, later on today. So there's a second one. Is that with all the yeah? Is for everyone who's taken any of those vaccines? Is 2 jabs? Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically, what happens is that the first jab is usually used to prime the immune system, so the immune system can activate the T cells, make the antibodies, and then the second one is usually to do two things. The first thing is to strengthen that immune response, but also to make it last longer. Now, people who get COVID, the actual disease, naturally produce immunity. However, we don't know how long the immunity from getting COVID lasts in the body. But what we do know is that vaccines produce the best and the longest type of immunity in the body. So if you come into contact with the virus again, then you're more likely to be able to fight it and suffer less of the complications. And so, yes, if you've already had COVID, please get the vaccination. And please, if you've had one jab of the vaccine, please don't miss your second appointment. Please attend for that one as well. But also, please carry on with all the infection control measures as well, such as washing hands, wearing the mask, social distancing as well.
If you've had both and you've been vaccinated, can you still get COVID from someone who's not?
Yes, is the answer. You can still get COVID, but it's very unlikely. And you still need to adhere to all of the infection control measures, because it's not just one piece of the jigsaw. The vaccine is a big part of the jigsaw, but there's other parts of it as well, which you still need to adhere to. But if you do get the COVID-19 virus after you've had the second jab, then it's very unlikely to be serious. You're less likely to be hospitalized, and death is less likely to result from the virus as well.
Right. I mean, I'm going right into the household where that's even divided, not even communities. Households are divided where someone in the household wants it, someone's not against, someone's against it, and they still have to live together, and especially lockdown, everyone's kind of, and I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with the elder ones saying, "Oh, we've been through everything in life, and this is not going to make a difference now. We've been through everything, and why do we need it?" That's some of the elder people are giving that to the young people. The young people say, "No, we want this," but they have to go back home and live with them. So it's right down to the ground. I'm trying to really get these answers, because I got no answers for these people. I mean, it's where is it? Who do they go to? Who do they turn to? People don't even, doctors don't even have that much time to speak to patients. I'm sure you guys do, but it's really, really by appointment, and you got them on the phone, and they don't really have the time to explain things. It seems like we're ducking and diving, and we just need a strong, united, positive message that no one can even doubt. We're not getting that.
So
I think the message is... Oh, sorry, Fazana, sorry.
I'm sorry, what to do. As I said, there is a lot of central... so I think it is something that needs to be at all layers. There is a lot of central government messaging, and it is, I would say, I'm quite involved in it, in different languages as well. But I think that is one part of that jigsaw, as Carter says, that there's national messaging. But as we spoke earlier, understandably, a lot of people don't want to just hear national messaging, and I think along with that requires that local input. Doctors, practice nurses, our general practices are made up of more than just GPs. So I would say, please, if you feel your doctors don't have time, we do have time, we do have practice nurses, we would rather invest that time and keep you safe. And you would actually be doing us a favor, because we don't want you to be suffering from long COVID 6 months down the line. But apart from the health professionals, there's community. So Carter talked about faith leaders earlier. Certainly nationally, there's an awful lot of BAME community groups that I was actually at a number 10 virtual roundtable where they were engaging a lot of BAME groups, grassroots groups, and then let's not forget our positions in the family. I mean, I don't know about you two, but when my mum used to tell me to put my coat on, I put my coat on. When I tell my kids to put their coat on, they will. We have got people who are in those families like you described. If we can help maybe a mum to understand that this is important, she might be able to encourage her mother-in-law, her father-in-law, her mother, her father, her husband, and her older children to have the vaccines. And certainly where I am, and in a lot of places, we've got what we call some community COVID champions. So these are volunteers from the community who've come forward, who wanted to help spread the message. They're not getting paid for it. They're just volunteers from the community. We've got over 100 of them, and they're helping do those telephone calls to people who are a bit reluctant to take their vaccine. So I think, as you say, it requires a whole approach.
We're getting some real great advice. I hope you're enjoying this advice, guys, from the real professionals. We're going to go to one more break, and we're going to come back with the last parts. We're getting closer to this now. See, I learned so much. I hope you're enjoying this. So we'll see you after the break. Hi guys, big respect. You're back with me, Apache Indian, Dr. Jack. How are we doing, Jack?
Good, man.
I learned so much. 3 doctors in the place. Our special 2 guests, Dr. Carter, Dr. Fazana. Thank you so much. I hope you've watched this series because it's about health, it's about the vaccine. We're going to our last part. I'm sure there's so much more questions you want to ask. So maybe we can do a part 2 with all your questions. But I've been enlightened today by so much of this conversation because I have my vaccine tonight. So we're going to have another question for him.
Yeah, it's now how long does this protection last for? You know, is it a day? Is it going to be 50 years? Is it somewhere in the middle?
So at this moment in time, we don't know. That's the truth. We don't quite know. Things are being a bit more coloured by the fact that you've heard of the new variants, you know, the different new strains of the virus. We've heard of the Brazilian one and the South African one, the British one. But there's already lots of research work being done in England as we stand to look at protecting against those new variants. It's too early to say. It may be that it is a virus, like the flu is caused by a virus. It might be that it will become an annual jab. It might be something that will become a seasonal annual jab. But at the moment, we're not sure how long the protection will last. We will only know that as time goes forward.
Great. I mean, there's a lot of worry about these new variants, isn't there, and mutations. But it's important to recognise that flu mutates very heavily and often, doesn't it? You know, this actually mutates less often. You know, so we manage okay with the flu and tweaking that jab, so you get a different one every year. So it's trying to just allay people's fears around those new variants, isn't it? That we can obviously don't change your behaviour and keep playing by all the rules and being strict, but there is something that can be done to the vaccines.
Absolutely, and because so much work has been done on the vaccines, already work is being done to see the vaccines being, you know, protective against the new variants. So it's as you say, Jack, you know, people are invited for their flu jab every year. You know, you're not protected just because you had a flu jab 10 years ago, and it's important not to panic about that. Viruses do that. They're quite clever little things. They will mutate, but it's nothing to worry about, and already vaccine technology is so good that that's already being worked on as we stand.
I mean, the recent story about somebody coming in from Brazil and they're tracking him down and they found him all the way in London. That was a scary story for me. It's like finding a criminal.
MI5?
Yeah, they're tracking him down. I mean, but it was like so important to find this person because there was another strand of this. And I'm talking from the layman person. It's scary to hear these things. It's scary to hear these new strains from different countries. That means it's different from what we've got. It's more risk in this. What is it? Well, how can we? It just adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it?
I think another thing as well that's inherent to the lockdown is we normally have a much broader support system than this. We have a broader network of people that we go to, that we trust, we have a coffee with, we have cake with. We take on their joint expertise and form a conclusion based on that. But now you might be on your own and you've got a Facebook feed. You haven't got those same filter systems that you would have.
I think it's a very sorry, Fazana. It's just a very, like you say, Jack, it's a very polarized source of information at the moment. You may not be getting the same amount or the same variation in your information sources. But when you talk about variants, you have to remember COVID-19 is a life form. It's going to fight for its survival. There's natural selection, there's natural mutation. And like you mentioned, Jack, you know, it's like the flu vaccine. It's different every year to account for the different variants. And, you know, we've just got to make sure that we all band together and work together and take personal ownership and responsibility and adhere to the government guidelines and have our vaccine. And these are the main ways we're going to overcome this pandemic.
Great. I mean, I think One important thing is the mechanics of, how will people be contacted to get their vaccine? What happens then? How do they go about actually getting it in their arm?
I mean, most people will be eligible for the vaccine, but there's very few people who can't have it, and that includes people with severe allergies to the actual ingredients of the vaccine itself, or if you're pregnant. And now that's because it's not routinely offered when you're pregnant, because it's unethical and immoral to recruit pregnant women into clinical trials. That's the only reason. And you have to remember, you don't have to be registered with a GP or know your NHS number to book the vaccine appointment, and no information will be shared with immigration services. It's highly confidential, as with all of the contents of your medical consultation. But Fazana, you can obviously move on to where you can get the vaccine and things.
Okay, thank you, Carter. So, as we stand, from this week, even people who are over 50 are going to be sent invitations. Everybody who's over 50 now or has a long-term condition. So if you're not sure if you do or you don't, ask your GP practice. But if you've got diabetes, if you've got chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, something called COPD, if you've had a heart attack, all of these conditions and some more would allow you to be eligible right now. Lots of GP practices are providing the vaccine, and there's also other sites. So some community pharmacists are, and some what we call mass vaccination centres, so just bigger vaccination centres. There's lots of places to have your vaccine. If you're not sure, then again, you can always ask your GP practice. Everybody who's over 50 right now in the UK is going to be invited. And if you're under 50 and you have a long-term condition, you should also have had an invitation, because general practice, we know our patients, we know who's registered with us, we are actively inviting those people. So if you have a long-term condition and you're under 50, feel free to contact your general practice if they haven't already invited you. In the future, those cohorts are going to go down. So it is going to be then 40s, 30s, 20s, and everybody above 18. And it won't be long before that happens. Certainly before the autumn, we're only looking at a few weeks. This is a huge success. Lots of things haven't been, like you say, Apache, we wonder why the Brazilian chap, the person who brought in the Brazilian variant had to be chased around, but lots of things we appreciate hasn't been. But the vaccination campaign for COVID in the UK, I think, has been world class. And I don't work for the government, I'm a family GP, but it's been world class. And it's been great to see, as Carter mentioned earlier, cross-party MPs have made, great campaigns. I saw it on Twitter. Lots of MPs from different parties have come together to talk about how important it is and how positive they feel about taking their COVID vaccine. So my message would just be, please, if you have any fears, ask. That's what we are here for. Your faith leaders are there for, but please come forward and have your vaccine. It will save your life.
Dr. Carter?
So, vital thoughts for me is that there's been a disproportionate impact due to the pandemic on different communities. The Southeast Asian community, the Black community have been particularly hard hit. There are many theories behind why that might be, varying from multi-generational living, from front-facing jobs in the community, multi-morbidity. So, for example, there's high prevalences of cardiovascular disease, respiratory diseases, and metabolic diseases such as diabetes in ethnic minority communities, and that makes it more likely for you to contract COVID and develop the complications. So when we make statements of fact like that, saying community X or community Y or community Z is more likely to develop the virus, or less likely due to vaccine hesitancy to accept the vaccine, we need to be very careful with the language that we use, because words do matter. We don't want to further divide any communities or deepen any mistrust. We're saying these things from a point of support, from a point of empowerment, and with the whole premise of trying to increase engagement between any communities who are disproportionately affected and the healthcare profession, so that we can maximize the trust. And by helping one group, you're not just helping that group, you're helping the whole of society. And as Fazana said, no one is safe until everyone is safe.
Well, I think it's important that people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. But with you guys, you know a lot and you care a lot. You know, you take your oath very seriously. I think that mixture of expertise and care, altruism, is the perfect potion, really. And every doctor cares deeply about people. It's not about race. It's not about colour. It's about, we have a duty of care and we're here for you. And you can
Any
trust
last
us.
words from you guys before we leave?
Well, I get really passionate. I speak Punjabi and I say, Tike to na daro, bamari to daro, tika luao, bamari no bajao, which means don't be afraid of the vaccine, be afraid of the disease. Get the vaccine and beat the pandemic.
Beautiful. I like that. He's a poet, he's a singer as well, I'm telling you. You're going to get him in the studio.
Boom
Dr.
shakalak.
Boom shakalak. Dr. Prasanna?
I would say that, look at the figures. 1 in 3 adults in the UK have had their vaccine. That's how much people have trusted it, and nobody has died from it. And, if you're, we are not immigration. You do not need to be registered with the GP or in fact have an NHS number. If you want your vaccine and it's your time, you've been invited. If you're over 50, you will have been invited. You just call 119 or you log in to NHS UK COVID vaccine and you will get it. This is not immigration. We are the health service. So if you are a bit nervous about that, please don't be. You are still completely entitled to your vaccination.
Absolutely. Thank you
Great.
so much, guys. Can I say thank you to both of you, Dr. Carter, Dr.
Thank
Prasanna.
you. It's been brilliant having you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, guys, for watching. We do it here. Brit Asia Health Show, talking about the vaccine. We're bringing real change right from here. Dr. Jack, what you're saying, respect, man, all the time. You keep it locked.